Stanley went around touching every little thing in the office, but it didn't make a single difference, nor did it advance the story
사람.
in any way.
저 뭐야? 잠깐만. 왜 사람이 있지? 다른 엔딩을 좀 찾아보자.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left. Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there.
PPT 한번 쭉 봐야지.
Stanley just stood there doing nothing at all. He seems to think I have nothing better to do with my time than to sit around and describe every fascinating little detail of his inability to do anything. This is why Stanley and I are on such good terms. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office. But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours. He might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. All of my co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason at all? None of it made any logical sense. And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations. For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down? Why did doors close automatically behind him wherever he went? And for that matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they simply repeating? No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real. And at last, he came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it. I'm dreaming, he yelled. This is all a dream. Oh, what a relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake up soon. I'll have to go back to my boring real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So, he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground. Then he imagined himself soaring through space on a magical starfield, and it too appeared. It was so much fun, and Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up. How was he remaining so lucid? And then perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking? Now the voice was describing itself being considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange. I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts, he thought. And while he thought it all very odd and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be? Was Stanley simply deceiving himself, believing that if he's asleep he doesn't have to take responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life. Now, hearing the voice speak these words was quite a shock to Stanley. After all, he knew for certain, beyond a doubt, that this was in fact a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself
제발,
too.
잠깐만.
Surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control, that this was a dream. So he closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up. He felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin, the press of the mattress on his back, the fresh air of a world outside this one. Let me wake up, he thought to himself. I'm through with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please, it's all I want. I want my apartment, and my wife, and my job. All I want is my life exactly the way it's always been. My life is normal. I am normal. Everything will be fine. I am okay.
아,
Stanley began screaming. Please, someone, wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I? And everything went black. This is the story of a woman named Mariella. Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments she considered the strange man.
봤다.
He was obviously crazy. This much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, and in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day, the very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this, so it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
슈불.
How wonderful. Stanley was alone. Finally.
응?
This is
빨리
great,
바뀌었어.
he thought to himself. This is what I've wanted all along. I got what I wanted.
나레이션이 바뀌었죠. 어휴, 이거 되게 괜히 섬뜩하네 이거. 안 무서운 게임인데 무서워.
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, he entered the door on his left.
번호 틀리러 가보자.
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
어? 그러니까 해고당하지 않는 뭐 PPT인데 맨 마지막에 해고당하지 마세요라고 써있더라. 부자가 돼요. 범죄, crime, is it a crime? To commit crimes, isn't it rich? Other life it would be to have to pick just 화장실은 뭐가 없나? 어이, 내가 그렇구나. 다시 돌아가면 엘리베이터도 있네. 되잖아. 올라갈 수도 있고 내려갈 수도 있고. 분기가 되게 많네. 네, 엘리베이터 흔들리는 게 좀 불안한데. 아니 올라갈 거야. 아이 정말. 어쨌든 파타. 어서 오세요. 아, 오늘은 다른 게임 좀 선물해 주신 것들 한 번씩 해보려고. 야, 화면 흔들리고 있어. 근데 왜 아무것도 안 돼? 내려가 볼까? 뭐야? 아무것도 안 돼.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. What could it mean? Stanley wondered aloud to nobody. He began wildly tearing through papers on the boss's desk, pulling books off the shelf, looking behind paintings, desperate for clues to his situation. But his attention was caught by a keypad behind the boss's desk. What could its purpose be? In fact, this keypad guarded the terrible secret that lay buried below his feet. And so the boss had assigned it an extra secret PIN number, 2845. But of course, Stanley couldn't possibly have known this.
일부러 틀려보면?
Stanley just sat around. Stanley simply began entering random codes into the keypad, knowing full well the sheer statistical unlikelihood that this would ever result in a correct combination. If he knew that the combo was 2845, it would be another story entirely. But no. 2845. Forgot, but it turns out that the panel's emergency override kicked in, and the door just opened all by itself. And Stanley got the hell along with the story. Well, whoop-de-doo.
뭐야 이게? 결국 열린단 소리 아니야? 좀만 더 눌러보자. 결국 열린단 소리인데. 여기서 좀 다른 길이 있나 한번 찾아보고. 어두워. 어두운데 뭔가 지금 맞춰볼까요? 떠질 수 있나? 떠오지. 아무 일도 없었습니다. 아 뭔가 이제 버튼 그거 누른 거밖에 없잖아. 끄는 거 말고 ON을 누르면 어떻게 되는지 한번 봐야지. 손가락이요? 그러네. 끝에가 빨개서 그러네. 어쨌든 봤다. 아휴.
Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility.
여기도 길이 있네.
Although this passageway had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley would meet his violent death.
정말?
But of course, Stanley thought better of it and realized he simply had too much to live for.
그래 한번 가보자.
Nope, still on board with death.
갈까 말까 갈까 말까 갈까 가보자. 근데 앞을 보고 가진 않을 거예요. 무서워.
The door behind him was not shut. Stanley still had every opportunity to turn around and get back on track. At this point, Stanley was making a conscious, concerted effort to walk forward
앞에
and
아무것도
willingly
없지.
confront his death.
뭐야? 안 죽었는데? 안 죽었어.
As the machine whirred into motion and Stanley was inched closer and closer to his demise, he reflected that his life had been of no consequence whatsoever. Stanley can't see the bigger picture. He
제발.
doesn't know the real story, trapped forever in his narrow vision of what this world is. Perhaps his death was a
노클립스.
loss, like plucking the eyeballs from a blind
노클립.
man. So he resigned and willingly accepted this violent end to his brief and shallow life. Farewell, Stanley.
Farewell, Stanley, cried the narrator, as Stanley was led helplessly into the enormous metal jaws. In a single visceral instant, Stanley was obliterated, as the machine crushed every bone in his body, killing him instantly.
뭐야, 안 죽었어.
And yet it would be just a few minutes before Stanley would restart the game, back in his office, as alive as ever. What exactly did the narrator think he was going to accomplish? When every path you can walk has been created for you long in advance, death becomes meaningless, making life the same. Do you see now? Do you see that Stanley was already dead from the moment he hit start?
안 죽었어. 카드 게임 켜져 있었는데. 오, 버튼 사운드. 다 다른데 소리가. 크레딧. Written and designed by Davey Redden and Redden? 레든? 윌리엄. 아니 뭐라 한 거야? 잠깐 이거 그건데 크레딧이잖아. 저건 뭐 게임 제작한 뭐 그런 거겠지? 사무실 전경도랑 뭐 이런 버튼 소리나. 이쪽은 보고 저쪽은 뭐야? 저기 먼저 가보자. 언더그라운드. 나레이션 아웃테이크스. 게임 개발에 이용한 소스들. 프리덤 엔딩. 아까 봤던 엔딩이 This was very first incarnation of the freedom ending in the game's alpha. 카운트다운 디스크. 위아래. 일로 가면 그건 것 같은데. 좀 더 구경하다 가자. 게임 디자인 먹고. 라운지. 얼리 버전 오브 더 라운지. 뭐야 저거 불안해. 아 아까 말씀하신 게 이거네. 15초 내로 전화 안 받으면 다른 엔딩이 나온다. 거의 이게 그건 것 같은데. 어쨌든 게임의 모든 세부 요소를 볼 수 있잖아요 여기서. 그러네요. 이거 뭐야? What about this? 아니, 봐도 모르겠어 뭔 소린지. 나레이션? 언제였지? 아 몰라. 우선 나갑시다.
Oh, look at these two. How they wish to destroy one another. How they wish to control one another. How they both wish to be free. Can you see? Can you see how much they need one another? No, perhaps not. Sometimes these things cannot be seen. But listen to me.
아 잠깐만.
You can still save these two. You can stop the program before they both fail. Push escape and press quit. There's no other way to beat this game. As long as you move forward, you'll be walking someone else's path. Stop now, and it'll be your only true choice. Whatever you do, choose it. Don't let time choose for you. Don't let time.
결국 재시작하란 소리 아니야. 장난 아니지.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean?
파타.
Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
어서 오세요. 아, 메모? 메모? 아니. 가서 보랬지. 봐봐. 스탠리 패러블 중에.
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors,
안 가.
he entered the door on his... This was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it. Wow. Yes. This room. What a beautiful room. What a gorgeous, gorgeous room. Thank goodness Stanley had taken this detour on his way to the meeting room. Life without having experienced this room was but eager to get back to business. Stanley took the first open door on his left.
이쪽도 가보고.
And so he detoured through the maintenance section, walked straight ahead to the opposite door, and got back on track.
아닌데요? 내려갈 건데요. 설마 또?
But Stanley didn't want to go back to the office. He wanted to wander about and get even further off track. So now in order to get back, he needed to go, from here it's, left.
오른쪽도 갈 수가 있어 근데? 못 가잖아.
Oh, no. No,
ah.
it's to the right, my mistake. No, not the right. Why would I have ever said it was to the right? What was I thinking?
이 새끼가.
It's clearly... Oh dear, would you hold on for a minute, please? Now, let's see. We went down right, left, down, left, right. Yep, okay, yes. I've got it now. This story is absolutely, definitely this way.
안 가. 차에 치일 것 같아.